The silence shattered like glass. One moment, Drew McIntyre stood victorious in the center of that unforgiving steel structure, blood streaming down his face, chest heaving with exhaustion, believing he had survived the absolute carnage of War Games. The next moment, the arena plunged into complete darkness. And when those lights exploded back to life, there he was, Jacob Fatu, the Samoan werewolf. Standing on the top rope like a predator who had been circling his prey for months, and last night at War Games, he finally pounced with a fury that nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, saw coming. What we witnessed on November 29, 2025 wasn't just a return. This wasn't some feel-good comeback story where a wrestler walks down the ramp, waves to the crowd, and cuts a promo about being back home. No. What Jacob Fatu did to Drew McIntyre was a statement written in violence, a message delivered with fists, elbows, and a level of controlled chaos that reminded every single person in that building and everyone watching around the world why this man is considered one of the most dangerous forces in professional wrestling today. The Scottish Warrior, a man who has conquered giants, a man who has stood toe-to-toe with Roman Reigns, Brock Lesnar, and anyone else foolish enough to step into his path, was left broken in the wreckage of those two rings, staring up at the lights, unable to comprehend what just hit him. But here's where this gets absolutely insane, and if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, you need to hit that button right now because we're diving deep into the chaos, the betrayals, and the absolute warfare that unfolded last night. We're breaking down every single detail, every connection, every hidden motive behind why Jacob Fatu chose this moment, this match, and specifically Drew McIntyre as his target. Because nothing in WWE happens by accident, and what we saw last night has implications that will shake the entire landscape of Monday Night Raw moving forward. So do me a favor, show some love, drop a like on this video, leave a comment telling me if you think Drew can recover from this, and make sure you share this with every wrestling fan you know because what we're about to discuss is going to blow your mind. Let's rewind for just a second. War Games 2025 was already pure mayhem before Fatu's music hit. Two teams, 10 warriors, throwing themselves at each other with reckless abandon inside those two rings surrounded by unforgiving steel. Drew McIntyre had been an absolute machine throughout the match, hitting claymore after claymore, throwing bodies into the cage walls, bleeding, suffering, but refusing to stay down. The man fought like someone possessed, like someone who had everything to prove after months of being disrespected, overlooked, and pushed aside by the company he's given everything to. And for a moment, just a brief, beautiful moment, it looked like Drew was going to walk out of Nashville with his team intact, with a victory that would cement his legacy as one of the toughest competitors to ever lace up a pair of boots. Then the lights went out. And in that darkness, you could feel the shift in the atmosphere. The crowd went silent. That deafening roar of 50,000 people just stopped, replaced by an eerie, uncomfortable quiet. Because everyone knew. Deep down, in their gut, they knew something was about to happen. And when those lights came back, when Jacob Fatu stood there with those cold, calculating eyes locked on Drew McIntyre, the entire arena erupted. Not in celebration. Not in joy. But in shock. In disbelief. In the kind of primal reaction you get when you witness something you can't quite process. Fatu didn't waste time with theatrics. He didn't pose for the cameras. He didn't soak in the moment. He launched himself off the top rope like a missile, all 300 pounds of Samoan fury crashing down onto Drew McIntyre with a diving headbutt that echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Drew crumpled. Instantly. His legs gave out, his eyes glazed over, and before he could even attempt to defend himself, Fatu was on him, forearms raining down like hammers, each strike landing with sickening precision, each blow fueled by months of frustration, months of being kept away from the spotlight, months of watching from the shadows while others claimed the glory that he believed should be his. And here's what makes this even more devastating for Drew McIntyre. This wasn't just a random attack. This wasn't just Jacob Fatu making an impact on his return. Multiple sources are now reporting that Fatu specifically requested this moment. He specifically asked to return at War Games. He specifically targeted Drew McIntyre. But why? What did Drew do to earn the wrath of the Samoan werewolf? That's the question everyone is asking, and the answer is more complicated and more sinister than you might think. Going back several months, before Jacob Fatu suffered that injury that kept him out of action, there were whispers backstage about tensions between Fatu and certain members of the roster. Reports surfaced about disagreements regarding booking decisions, about who deserved opportunities, about who was getting pushed and who was being held back. Drew McIntyre's name came up repeatedly in these discussions. Not because Drew did anything directly to Fatu, but because Drew represented everything Fatu resented. Drew was the chosen one. Drew was the guy management kept giving chance after chance despite failures and setbacks. Drew was the guy who could lose main event after main event but still find himself in the title picture. Meanwhile, Fatu felt like he had to scratch and claw for every second of television time, for every opportunity to show what he could do. Then Fatu got injured. And while he was sitting at home, recovering, rehabbing, watching WWE programming week after week, he watched Drew McIntyre continue to get opportunity after opportunity. He watched Drew complain about his position. He watched Drew throw tantrums about not being appreciated. And according to people close to Fatu, something inside him snapped. Because while Drew was complaining about not getting enough, Fatu was fighting just to get back. While Drew was demanding respect, Fatu was earning it in silence, putting in the work, preparing for the moment he could return and remind everyone who the real monster of WWE is. That moment came at War Games. And what a moment it was. After that initial assault, after Fatu had already battered Drew into near unconsciousness, most people expected security to flood the ring, expected officials to break it up, expected someone to stop the carnage. But nobody came. Nobody stopped him. And that's when things got truly sinister. Fatu grabbed Drew by the hair, lifted him up just enough to look into his eyes, and according to people sitting ringside, Fatu said something to Drew. We don't know exactly what was said. WWE's cameras didn't pick it up. But whatever those words were, they seemed to drain whatever fight Drew had left in him. Then came the moonsault. Jacob Fatu, all 300 pounds of him, climbed to the top turnbuckle, steadied himself, and launched backward through the air with a grace that should be impossible for a man his size. The moonsault connected perfectly across Drew's chest, driving every bit of air from his lungs, causing his body to convulse from the impact. But Fatu wasn't finished. He pulled Drew up again. Hip toss into the corner. Running hip attack that nearly broke Drew in half. The crowd was going absolutely insane at this point, torn between admiration for Fatu's dominance and concern for Drew's safety. Medical staff finally tried to intervene. They rushed the ring with a stretcher, with their equipment, with intentions of stopping the assault and getting Drew to the back for treatment. Fatu stared at them. Just stared. And they stopped in their tracks. That's the level of intimidation we're talking about here. Grown men, trained professionals, frozen in fear by nothing more than a look from Jacob Fatu. He turned his attention back to Drew, grabbed him one more time, and delivered a devastating pop-up Samoan drop that left Drew motionless in the center of the ring. Only then did Fatu allow medical staff to approach. Only then did he step back, roll out of the ring, and walk up that ramp without looking back. No celebration. No acknowledgement of the crowd. Just pure, controlled violence followed by a stone-cold exit. It was chilling. It was brutal. It was everything a wrestling return should be and more. But the story doesn't end there. Because while Drew McIntyre was being loaded onto a stretcher, while medical staff were checking his vitals and stabilizing his neck, while the broadcast team was scrambling to fill time and process what they had just witnessed, another layer of this situation began to emerge. Multiple wrestlers came out from the back, and instead of checking on Drew, instead of showing concern for their fallen colleague, they stood on the stage and watched. Just watched as Drew was wheeled past them. Some reports indicate that certain members of the roster were actually smirking, actually satisfied with what happened to the Scottish Warrior. This reveals something darker about Drew's position within WWE right now. Despite his years of service, despite his world championship reigns, despite everything he's accomplished, there seems to be a genuine lack of sympathy for him among his peers. Whether that's because of his attitude in recent months, his constant complaints, his confrontational behavior backstage, or something else entirely, the result is the same. Drew McIntyre stood alone against Jacob Fatu's onslaught. Nobody came to help. Nobody tried to even the odds. And that isolation might be the most damaging thing about this entire situation. As of right now, Drew's status is unknown. WWE has been tight-lipped about his condition, which usually means they're either protecting a major storyline development or genuinely assessing the extent of the damage. Reports from Nashville indicate that Drew was taken to a local medical facility for evaluation, with particular concern about potential concussion symptoms and rib injuries. The violence Fatu unleashed was legitimate enough that even though this is sports entertainment, even though certain elements are predetermined, the physical toll on Drew's body is very real. Meanwhile, Jacob Fatu is being positioned as the most dangerous heel on Monday Night Raw moving forward. His return has already generated more social media engagement than any WWE moment in the past 6 months. Fans are divided, which is exactly what WWE wants. Some people are celebrating Fatu's dominance, praising his in-ring ability, his presence, his legitimate aura of danger. Others are concerned about what this means for Drew, about whether this level of violence is necessary, about what precedent this sets for future feuds. And that's where we need your voice in this conversation. That's why I'm asking you, genuinely asking you, to please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We cover every major WWE event, every shocking moment, every backstage rumor and verified report. We don't just report what happens, we dive deep into why it matters, what it means for the future, and how it connects to the larger narrative. Wrestling is more than just what happens in the ring, it's about the stories being told, the characters being developed, the long-term booking decisions that shape everything we see. And right now, this Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre situation is shaping up to be one of the most significant storylines of the year. Think about where this goes from here. Does Drew McIntyre come back looking for revenge, potentially turning him into a sympathetic babyface for the first time in years? Does Jacob Fatu continue his path of destruction, taking out other top stars and establishing himself as the final boss of Monday Night Raw? Do these two men end up in a match at Royal Rumble, at Elimination Chamber, potentially even at WrestleMania? The possibilities are endless, and every single one of them is compelling. There's also the faction angle to consider. Jacob Fatu has strong ties to the Bloodline storyline that has dominated WWE for years. With Roman Reigns and the Usos on SmackDown, with Solo Sikoa leading his version of the faction, where does Fatu fit into that picture? Does he align with Solo? Does he operate independently as a lone wolf? Does he eventually challenge Roman himself for leadership of the family? These are questions that will be answered in the coming weeks and months, and you can bet we'll be covering every development right here on this channel. What happened at War Games was just the beginning. Jacob Fatu didn't just return, he declared war. Drew McIntyre wasn't just attacked, he was made an example of. And the entire WWE roster now has to operate with the knowledge that the Samoan werewolf is back, he's hungry, and he's coming for anyone who stands in his way. Monday Night Raw will never be the same. The landscape has shifted dramatically. And those of us who love this business, who live for these moments of shock and awe, we're all better for it. So let me know in the comments what you think happens next. Tell me if you're Team Fatu or Team Drew. Tell me where you see this story going and what matches you want to see. And please, if you got value from this breakdown, if you're now more informed about what went down and why it matters, show this channel some love with a like and share it with your wrestling community. We're building something special here at Ring Rumble, and every subscription, every like, every comment helps us grow and continue bringing you the absolute best wrestling content on YouTube. Jacob Fatu is back. Drew McIntyre is broken. And War Games 2025 will be remembered as the night everything changed.